Hello, my name is Jaime, and today I will be talking about Edward Douglas White, Chief Justice number 9, and later on Cooper Lee will talk about the Supreme Court case Powell versus Alabama. Edward Douglas White was born on November 3, 1845, in Thibodaux, Louisiana, to a wealthy upper-class family. His mother was Catherine Ringgold. His father was Edward White Sr., who was a plantation owner and former Louisiana governor. Edward White had a mainly Roman Catholic Jesuit education. He enrolled briefly in St. Mary's College and Georgetown College, but then had to stop his education and join the Civil War. He fought for the Confederate Army until he was captured in 1863 at the Siege of Port Hudson, and was held captive until the end of the war. After that, he studied law at Tulane University and New Orleans. White had an overall very successful political career. He entered Louisiana politics as a Democrat and was elected state senator in 1874. He then was appointed to the Louisiana Supreme Court in 1878 at 33 years old, but he was later removed from the court when he could not meet a new minimum age requirement enacted after his appointment became effective. 10 years later, he returned to politics when the state legislature elected him to represent Louisiana in the U.S. Senate in 1890. White's presidential appointment started with President Grover Cleveland nominating him to the court, and by 1894 he was elevated to Chief Justice by President William Howard Taft. White's most important contributions came in the area of antitrust law. In the Supreme Court case Standard Oil v. U.S., White stated that only unreasonable monopolies were prohibited, so he appealed to the common law to allow reasonable restraint. Another antitrust case was U.S. v. American Tobacco, held in a New York federal court where the American Tobacco Company was held guilty for violating the Sherman Antitrust Act by attempting to restrain commerce and monopolize the tobacco business. White was the first sitting associate justice to be elevated to Chief Justiceship. The rule of reason was his major decision and contribution in 1911 that federal courts have since applied to antitrust cases. Another contribution of White was the fixing of minimum wages and maximum hours for railroad workers. White died on May 19, 1921, Washington, D.C., leaving an unerasable mark in history.
Good morning, guys. This is Cooper Lee. Today, I'm going to be talking about Powell versus Alabama, 1932. This case involved O.Z. Powell and 7 other African Americans who committed this crime, and 2 white ladies who were victims, and Chief Justice and respondents. This case had happened in February 13, 1932, and had been decided in November 7, 1932, which was not over. The case was reheard and re-exonerated in 1937. The crime occurred in Jackson, Alabama. In this case, jury sentenced 8 African Americans to death for raping 2 white girls on the train. This is the starter. Nonetheless, the case was found violating 6th and 7th Amendments because the accused were not provided adequate legal representation at their trials. So the charge to the 8 accused African Americans was withdrawn, and the state attorney officially declared to exempt the death penalty of the 8 African Americans. After the case had been finalized, it stirred a huge impact on American society, because this case involved race problems and wrong crude judgment and existence of violation of the amendments.